So it just made me feel so old all of a sudden. So I grew up in Calcutta. I passed out my 12th from Lawrence, joined Xavier's, passed out in 92. I'm a Calcutta University third rank holder. I did my ICW in 93, gold medalist and all India third. Did my CA from Pricewaterhouse, Calcutta. And, I started my career with ABB as it was a Swedish company into power generation, transmission. Then I moved to Cable and Wireless, a British telecom company. Worked very small stint at Tata's, and then I was with Infosys for 16 years, where I eventually left in 2015 as a CFO there. Tried with Ola as a startup company, and I wanted to have an experience of startup. And I think the discussion that we're going to have today is about the work culture, difference between corporates and startups. And I've seen both the worlds. I've seen multinationals, I've seen Indian business houses, I've seen growth companies, I've seen startups. So hopefully I'll be able to share my experiences with you in terms of how my experience has been and what you can gain from there. The subject of the discussion today made me just think about the environment that we all grew up in, as against the environment that you guys are growing up in. When we grew up, we lived in a completely different world, a world in which probably none of you can ever imagine. There was no campus placement, there was no internet, there was no Facebook, no Instagram, no phones, no Google. So we didn't have campus placements. We had no startups. There were very few large business houses like Tata's, Birla's, and L&T was a very large group. ITC was a big company, and then there were some foreign banks and a few your audit firms. So when we passed out, we had to look for jobs. As against companies coming to our campus and trying to place us, we had to go probably look at it because there was no internet, there were no phones. We had to probably look at newspaper ads, send our resumes by post, which we never knew whether it reaches the company or not and where it goes. But that was a different world. And, when I started my career, I joined ABB, and a lot of my batchmates joined foreign banks. And I think those days, foreign banks used to pay roughly about 10,000 rupees per month as a salary. ITC used to take people as interns in internal audit function, paying about 10,000 rupees as salary. And I joined ABB, and ABB was giving us a stipend of 6,500 rupees to start with per month, and we went up to 7,500 rupees after a year. And I chose ABB. And you may think that I'm dumb. Why would I, leave a foreign bank or look at multinational, or look at companies which are paying almost 50% higher salary and join ABB. And I guess the decision in hindsight has turned out to be right. ABB gave me a foundation which probably none of the other companies could have given me, and I've done well for the start that I had. So the first lesson which I want all of you to understand is that what seems very obvious may not be the right decision or may not be the best decision in your career. Things always look bright, things always look obvious. There are certain things which drive you to take certain decisions, but you have to take a longer view of things. And during the session, I'll take you through as to what I mean by that. But I've come across so many individuals, so many youngsters who are driven by something and they feel like it's an obvious choice, an obvious decision. But life is a long journey, right? Your career is almost a 40-year career. And when you build a house, also build a strong foundation. Only then you can build a palace on top of it. But without investing time in building a foundation, if you try to build a career, it doesn't work. So that's a lesson number one. It is, in my view, it is not about whether it's corporate versus startups, to be honest, though we'll cover the topic. Within corporates, it could be multinationals, there could be Indian business houses. And, startups, again, there are a lot of startups. I think today, India is the third largest ecosystem in the world for startups after US and China. And this sector is going to grow because India is with a large population, density of population, it's just increasing our per capita income. Probably our economy is the fastest growing economy, young population, and probably will be the most populous country in the next 1 year. So there's a huge opportunity. We have the youngest population in the world. We have the largest English-speaking population in the world. So startups is the right ecosystem for startups. But the question which comes is, how do you take a decision as youngsters, when you're starting a career? Is it a corporate? Is it a multinational? Is it a large Indian business house, or is it a startup? And the way I look at it is that it is not about what you choose; it is about the potential that you see in each one of them. Because when you choose a company, you're choosing a company to start your career to be successful, right? And not because something looks more obvious, something looks that it's the right thing to do, and everybody is doing that. I think if you follow herd mentality, you will always be one in the crowd. You'll be lost in the crowd. But if you want to stand out in the crowd, you probably have to take a different decision. So the question which it arises from here is that how do you define success, and what would make you successful? I think that's primarily the whole objective of the discussion. Uh, it isn't. There's no single definition of success. For me, success could mean very different from what success could mean to each one of you. Uh, you know, to some, success would mean a great professional life. To someone else, it would mean a good work-life balance. To someone else, it could mean a good amount of money they earn in their careers. And for somebody else, it could be a lot of travel, social security, medical facilities, or whatever it could be. So I think the lesson number 2 for everyone has to be that you have to figure out your own definition of success. What drives you? What is that you're looking for? Because there's no single definition, there's no single answer. And now coming to the topic for today's discussion, right? The contrast in work culture and experience between startups and corporate. I think it's a question in minds of many youngsters. I have a 19-year-old daughter. She's just starting her CA. She's also a BCom student in Bangalore. And I have this discussion with her where when she meets her friends, she'll come across and tell me, this is what I want to do in life, and this is what everybody's doing. And I think what I tell her is that building a career is a long journey. It is not something that you can build in a year or two. So don't think about startup versus corporate. First, let's understand, what is a startup, right? A startup is a company that is revolutionizing the markets. Today, unfortunately, startup has become such a buzzword that anybody who starts a business, even if he starts a shop, calls it a startup. And they start a shop and they start looking for funding and they want to raise money. And they kind of coin the word saying that, look, I'm running a startup. The way the startup started in the world and India was very different because it was trying to solve a business problem. It was trying to solve a problem which existed through a technology solution. The whole idea of startup was it's a capex-type model. There were youngsters who were very passionate about trying to solve a problem. They went around, found a technology solution, capex-type model. All they had was an idea. And they wanted to make it big and they wanted to make an impact to the world, right? One of the important ingredients of a startup is a flywheel or network effect, right? And what is a network effect? Like if you look at Facebook or you have friends there. Now, if you have friends there, you have memories there built over the last 10, 20 years, it's very difficult for someone else to come in and build a competitive product so that, because you have your memories built there, it's not easy to move to something else. Because your friends are there, their friends will join them. So it creates a network effect. And, and slowly the business starts growing. The whole idea of a startup was that, how does it create a network effect and how does it grow exponentially in a short period of time? So that's the right definition of startup. Now, what does startup mean? Startup means a very, very non-hierarchical culture, a lot of innovation, a lot of youngsters running the company. So it's a very young culture. It's a fun place to work, but there's no structure. There's a lot of dynamism, there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of flexibility, but there are cons too, because eventually every startup has to become a corporate, right? If you look at some of the large companies in India today, whether it's Paytm, whether it's Zomato, whether it's Nykaa, eventually they have to become corporates. They have to list on the public markets. They have to raise equity, right? Because beyond a point, the private equity money dries up. So you may make it big through a startup, but eventually every startup has to become a corporate. The question which arises then, is it the right question to say, should you start your career with a startup or a corporate? Because eventually every startup that you join will become a corporate, right? Unless you are looking at just switching your job and staying in startups. Now, what are the cons? The cons are that it's very unstructured. You're joining the idea, you're joining a passion of a few founders. And it's a brutal world. For behind every success, there are hundreds of unsuccessful stories. It's like when you look at Bollywood or Hollywood, you see, the stars who are successful, but behind that, there are millions of struggling actors who are unsuccessful. And, we probably don't sit back and think about all the unsuccessful stories. So startups also have a lot of failures. Generally, 8 out of 10 startups fail in the very first year or second year of the start, and very few of them make it big. But beyond a point, it's a journey. It is not that a startup is successful and successful. If you look at I had the pleasure, the privilege to work with some of the very startups. I used to advise a few startups also. If you look at Flipkart, right? Flipkart became very big, but eventually they sold it out to Walmart, right? Ola, I joined Ola. I was the CFO at Ola for about 2 years. We were growing very fast. It was the right problem to solve in India. India has an infrastructure problem. India had a very bad transport system, and it just seemed right that you have a problem statement. India, beyond tier one cities, doesn't have a good public transport system. So how can you solve the problem, right? And it was a capital site model. You created a platform, you got drivers to sign up, and there were customers who were willing to pay you. And people used to struggle going in buses, and now you have air-conditioned cabs. So it seemed right, but we are growing. I think when I used to deal with private equity investors, all they want is in 3 to 5 years, you should double their money or probably get a multiple of the money. So how do you keep growing the business beyond a point? At one point of time, our monthly cash burn was $55 million, which means that every 6 to 8 months, we had to raise $500 million of equity, right? So you keep diluting the company, you keep diluting, the promoter stakes coming down, you keep looking for new investors, and we started raising more debt, right? But what we realized is India is such a unique market as against Uber, which is operating in the Western world. I think India is a very price-sensitive market. Here, customers want service, but they would not want to pay for the alternates available, right? As long as an auto or my Ola or Uber was cheap, people would want the convenience. But the moment the rates go up, they're okay to walk to the corner or the street corner and pick up an auto. They would not want to pay extra. So India is a very price-sensitive market. I think the other challenge we probably didn't look into was the traffic issue in India. Generally you get a lot of rides in the morning during rush office hours. And what we realized is a driver to really make a good amount of money had to do about 11 to 12 rides a day, right? And most of the rides come during office hours, right? Morning hours and evening hours when the rush hours are, where people are looking for cabs. And afternoons we have oversupply. And during the morning office hours, we had a shortage of supply of cars. But the challenge is because of traffic issue, the turnaround time of a driver was that he could at max, if he was lucky, he could do probably 2 rides during rush hours, or else he would end up doing 1 ride. So eventually, because the customer was not willing to pay more money, and at the same time, drivers were able to get more rides, it was not a viable option. So though the idea was great, it was a business problem which had to be solved. It has been solved globally. But India being a unique market, so again, coming to the lesson number 3, when you look at a startup, though it may look like a great opportunity, great idea, solving a real business problem, I think at your age, you'll have to look at multiple aspects to figure out whether it's going to be successful or not. Finally, you succeed when the organization that you work for succeeds. It's not about whether it's a corporate or a startup, but you are betting on a corporate. Your betting is like, you take a bet on a company, and if the company grows, you grow along with it because you have been with the company. So I think this is an important part. And corporates, again, there are pros and cons of joining corporate. I started my career with multinational companies, and I never thought I'd work in an Indian company. I think it was a taboo those days, and I didn't want to work in an Indian company. I started with multinationals. I had a great foundation. I learned a lot. But you do very structured work. You do very little work. I passed my CA, and for the first 6 months, I was doing travel reconciliations. I was a rank holder. And after passing your chartered accountancy and CA courses, you feel that you've achieved something in life. When you go to the corporate life and you realize that you're doing travel reconciliations on 2 pads, there was no automation that time, there was no computerization that time to a large extent. And I was doing manual travel reconciliation, which could have been done by probably a class 12 student. And I was just wondering, why have I even done a professional course if this is what I need to do? But I think, again, one important lesson for youngsters, because all of us didn't have choices those days. So we had a job, we went to a job. There were days when we were very upset. We were trying to question about, why we are doing what we're doing. But I think patience is very important, right? If you've heard the story of, tortoise and hare story, patience is very, very important when you're building a career. It's a 40-year marathon. It's not a sprint. So everything that you learn in your life is going to pay dividends at some point of life, some point in your life. When I was doing travel reconciliation, it taught me, the value of automation, what needs to be done, how the process needs to be fixed. my advice to all of you, while startup is a buzzword, it looks very, very attractive, looks very sexy. People like the young average age, or if you are 24, 25 years, you feel like it's a college campus. But it's very important for all of you to do your own SWOT analysis first. First you need to know what you bring to the table and then find the right environment for you. So lesson number 3 for all of you is going to be choose an environment where you may flourish. You have to do your own SWOT analysis. You have to play on your strengths, because all of us as individuals have our own strengths, our own weaknesses. There's certain environment that we thrive in, but there's certain environment that we will not thrive in. Now, there's no easy answer of saying that, a corporate versus startup or X versus Y, but it is about the individual choice. Who you are, what matters to you the most, what is your strength, because you always have to play on your strength. Everybody is born with weaknesses, everybody has weaknesses. Now, do you spend your life trying to, cover up your weaknesses, or trying to bridge the gap on your weaknesses, or try to play on your strengths and complement your skills with the team members who will probably cover up your weaknesses? So I think my advice to all of you would be that choose an environment you may flourish. It is not necessarily what works for A would work for B or would work for C. When I started my career, I said, I probably chose a company which is paying the lowest. I was probably, academically I'd done very well. I worked with, I did my articles with Pricewaterhouse, and I started my career with probably the lowest salary among my batchmates. But what made me take the decision? And I'll tell you that, what I looked at is a potential that the company had, or the sector had in India. India, after the Manmohan Singh as a finance minister had just started liberalization, I think power sector reforms were the critical thing for India's growth story. And my bet was that the power sector in India would take off. There is a huge demand. The demand is huge, the supply is very short. And there is one sector which will grow very fast. And I always have a belief, and I still believe, that you grow when the company or the organization that you work for grows. So I picked up a sector which I believe had the potential to grow the fastest. And I started my career with them. 3 years down the line, I realized that in spite of all the potential that the sector had, it was really not growing the way it was supposed to. There was a lot of political thing, there was a lot of government interventions, there was a lot of support required from state boards. And then I switched to telecom, right? Because telecom was the next bust thing in India. Telecom sector reforms had started. People were starting with the whole mobile technology. And then I moved to IT, because IT was, after telecom, IT looked very interesting, and then internet looked very interesting. So I moved from ABB to Cable Wireless to Infosys, to Tata to Infosys, and to Ola. And now I see that the potential in India is for, say, infrastructure companies, for old economy companies, because India today needs to create jobs, right? And if you look at the last 2 budgets that the government has presented, there's a lot of impetus and a focus on public infrastructure spending, growth companies. So I somewhere feel that when you are passing out, you need to you need to understand the economy. You need to understand the environment in which you're going to operate. Pick up a sector which you feel is going to grow the fastest, and pick up a growth company. Don't try to pick up the best company in the sector, because if the best company is not giving the potential to grow, then it's of no use. You have to pick up a sector, you have to pick up a company which has a maximum potential to grow, and then bet on that company and grow with it. So again, coming to the point, startups, yes, there's huge potential. India is the 3rd largest ecosystem. China, with all its challenges today, a lot of private equity guys, China is the largest market, but I think somewhere India is a very attractive market for people. So there's a lot of private equity money flowing into India. So startups are going to continue, but you have to bet on the right startup. There are many people who start companies and they would sell their company and move on to start something else, but you as employees will get stuck, right? So you have to do your homework, pick on the right company, and eventually every startup has to become a corporate. So you also have to learn to work in a corporate. Corporate is more structured work, more hierarchical work, and it's not easy surviving the corporate, because corporate life can be very, very challenging at times too. So my advice to you would be, going by my experience, I've worked with large corporates, I've worked with multinationals, I've worked with domestic business houses, I've worked with startups. I worked with US, I worked for 2 years in US. I think it is not important whether it is a multinational or a US company or an Indian company or a startup. It is about you. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do you define your own success? How do you measure your own success? Which environment you will thrive, you will succeed, and then make a choice, because every individual is different. But yes, startups are more glamorous, more the buzzword right now. But the risk and reward mechanism works for everything. Anything which gives you a huge reward also comes with a lot of risk. Corporates are more stable, more structured. You have a career path. You know that you will potentially grow up to a certain point and then independent. So my advice to you will be that look at things from a very different perspective as against this. But all companies are great, whether it's startup or corporate. All of them give equal opportunities to people. It is about you. Look at yourself. Look at what would make you succeed. So with that, I don't have anything more on this topic, and I can probably open it up for questions, whatever questions you have, and whatever I can help you with.
Thank you so much, sir, for that lovely session. We'll be taking a few questions from the YouTube chat box now. Firstly, a candidate wants to know as to what are some of the most important soft skills for success in any career, and how can students develop these skills given the fact that every corporate is looking for such skills in a student?
In today's world, your interpersonal skills, communication skills are very important. You may be the best in your academics, you may be very knowledgeable, you may be a problem solver. But if you can't articulate, you can't communicate, and you can't communicate your idea to somebody else, it doesn't work. I've seen so many people, brilliant people, but not good in interpersonal skills, not good in communication skills. They initially do get jobs because the academics are very strong and they come across as somebody. But after a certain point of time, after 8 to 10 years of your work life, it is not your technical capabilities or your work knowledge which helps you grow. It is your interpersonal skills, your attitude, your ability to work in large teams, ability to take decisions on the fly. That helps a lot. And honestly, when I used to interview people, in my later part of my career, I never used to look at people from technical skills. I never asked a single technical question. The only thing which I was measuring people was on the attitude, on the interpersonal skills, the ability to articulate. Finally, when somebody meets you as a candidate, they're going to meet you for about 45 minutes to an hour. In that 1 hour, you are supposed to summarize your entire life, all the things that you have done, all the things that you're good at, all the things that you can potentially do. So finally, you're selling yourself. You're selling yourself to the interviewer in that 45-minute chance that you've got to be able to impress him that he or she feels that you are the best candidate and he or she would fail without you being in his or her team. How do you do that? You cannot carry your certificates every time and say, look, I've done this. The idea is you should be able to articulate, communicate, and say that how good a team player you're going to be and how you're going to complement his skills as against trying to compete with him. So I think that becomes very important.
All right, sir. So another question that students have is that given the fact that students crave work-life balance right now, how can they balance their short-term and long-term career goals? And what are some strategies for achieving both consequently?
No easy answers to that, honestly. I remember when I started my career, we used to slog, we used to work 12, 14 hours a day. Not that I don't work 12 to 14 hours a day, but those are the days you didn't have a choice. At least now I can plan my life and I can decide which day I'll work 12 hours and which day I'll work 5 hours. But those days you had to slog. But I'll not give you an answer which probably is the best answer to give. For example, I'll tell you when I passed out my 12th in St. Lawrence, I was not a good student till then, and I happened to top the school. And a lot of students came to me and asked me about, so what made me succeed and what made me probably get a rank in the state. And I gave them very obvious answers in their own, you have to work 12 to 14 hours a day, you have to study hard, you don't get sleep. The fact is, I never did any of those stuff. I studied for 5 to 6 hours a day. I never studied for 15, but you have to give an advice in that you have to study 15 hours. But, I'll tell you, there was a survey which was done by one of the large HR consulting firms across different continents. And they asked people in America, Europe, and India about how would they prioritize between the three things: salary, career growth, and work-life balance or social security. Americans, for the first Americans was money, second was work-life balance, third was career. So there people worry more about the salary they get, and the career and the designation comes last. Europe, the first answer was social security, work-life balance. Then came money, and then came career. When they did a survey in India, the first answer was career, right? Because for them, people, designation is very important. How they're perceived in the social circles is more important than anything else. Second was money. Third was work-life balance. Nobody cared shit about work-life balance in India because for them, it's okay to slog 15 hours a day. Who cares? Family will wait for you at home and they will understand and they will adjust. But for me, career and social status is more important. I think things are changing now, right? There's no easy answer, but I think it's a discipline that you set for yourself. All right. Honestly, whether you slog for 12 hours a day or 15 hours a day, the work does get done in 8 hours. It's a question of how effective you are in your work and how you set the boundary conditions and the ground rules. But as I said, how do you measure success? And what I usually used to advise my team members in Infosys and other companies was that success is never defined as a single dimension that you do within a career. At the end of the day, you have to be peaceful, and peace doesn't come by building a great career at the cost of your family life, right? It has to be a balance between career, family life, and money. Right now, you can decide which pivot you need to do at different points of time in your life. It's not necessary that at the start of a career, you need to have one pivot and that will continue forever in life, right? At the start of a career, it could be that if money is important or your designation or career is important. After 10 years, you may probably change the pivot and say, look, I'm gotten married now. I have children and I want to spend more time with the family and you change the pivot. But it's a personal discipline. I think it's more awareness about yourself, which helps. And what I realized, and honestly, and I used to ask this question to a lot of youngsters in my team. We used to spend hours planning for our company, doing strategizing for our company, going through the SWOT analysis, trying to look at opportunities, trying to look at what will make it succeed, what are the different things we've done. And one of the sessions after we finished a very long ruling session at about 8 in the evening, I was asking them, we spent a week trying to do that for the company. Have any of you ever done it for yourself? Have you sat back and thought about what will make you succeed? What is your SWOT analysis? What should you be doing in the next 1 year? What should you be doing in the next 6 months? No, answer was no, because there's never time to do that, right? So I think, people say it's 50% hard work. Yes, hard work is very important. There's no substitute for hard work if you have to be successful in a career. But then people also say it's luck and being at the right place at the right time, right? But I would say it's not luck. It is not luck at all. You have to be smart to identify opportunities so that you are at the right time at the right place. It doesn't come by luck. And the reason why I'm saying that is, you have to choose decisions saying, understand what is happening in India, understand what is happening globally, understand where the opportunities are, which sectors are going to throw up opportunities, understand your own skill sets, your own strengths, weaknesses, and then you decide where you want to position yourself. And if you do all of that, you will always be at the right time at the right place, right? It is not luck. So, no easy answers to how do you drive work-life balance, honestly. I think it's a lot of personal discipline and what drives you, how you define your success, and how do you want to prioritize your life. But there are managers, there are companies which actually, if it's important to you and you bring an important skill on the table, they would adjust to your work life. They would adjust to your asks. But once you set the expectation that you're willing to slog 15 hours, believe me, I've been the manager for hundreds of people. If I know a team member is willing to slog 15 hours and he doesn't care about his work life, I'll make him slog 15 hours. Because I know he's available to work 15 hours, so I will always dump him with work. So it's a lot of personal discipline.
Thank you so much, sir, for that answer. We'll be taking one last question now, and then we'll be moving on to the closing. So, sir, since you have experience with working in MNCs for many, many years, how do you think we as students, as freshers, navigate our relationships with our peers as well as with customers in different work environments, especially in MNCs?
It's not okay, but as I said, I don't see a difference between an MNC, an Indian business house, and a startup anymore. I think those differences were there about 10, 15 years back. No, they are professionally run companies to a large extent, right? One important thing that you need to understand that every organization is a pyramid, right? If there are 100 people at the bottom of the pyramid, there are only 50 who will grow to the next level. And out of 50, they're only going to be 20 which will grow to the third level. And out of 20, they're probably going to be 10, 5, and then 1 at top, right? But if you start competing with your peers from day one, neither will he succeed nor will you succeed. It's a teamwork at the end of the day, right? So you have to work in a team, knowing very well that you're competing with the team members to go up 100 to 50, 50 to 20, 20 to 10, 10 to 5. That's the reality of the world. So how do you professionally work with your peers? Work in a team, put team objectives at the top, but at the same time being able to differentiate yourself in terms of what you bring on the table. No easy answers. It's a trial and error. Every team is different. Every team dynamics is different. But a lot of people start competing from day one. It is about, I have to succeed at the cost of somebody else. And it's like frogs in a well where nobody will ever be able to come out of the well. So you fail as a team, you succeed as a team. But within team, please trust me, today managers have evolved. Managers are knowledgeable, managers are smart. They can differentiate about who's bringing more to the team than somebody else. So you have to trust the system. And that's the reason, again, the question about which company to join. You have to join a company which has people who can identify talent, who can groom talent, which can actually bet on youngsters and give them opportunity to grow, right? You have to work in an organization which is fair, which can give you those opportunities as against, based on nepotism and favoritism and all this stuff. So again, there's no academic answers to how do you work in a team and how do you create what kind of peer relationship should be there. But work in a team, because without teamwork, everybody will fail. But within that, always make it a point. And again, it's more about your conscious effort. If you're conscious about the fact that you have to make a differentiation and you want to make sure that your peers, your managers, your team members understand what you bring on the table. I think that's very important. So there are opportunities, a lot of times what I have seen is, again, I'm giving my example at Infosys. Was I the smartest guy who, among my peers who became the CFO? The answer is no, I was not the smartest. Right? There were people who brought far many more things on the table than I did. But it's probably the ability to see the larger picture and be able to understand how you can help the business grow. Finally, at the end of the day, we all survive, we all build our careers because we want the business to be successful. So I think there's no easy answer, but you have to work in a team, build team culture, build a company, and it's a trial and error method.
Thank you so much, sir, for that wonderful answer. I've personally taken away a lot from this session, and I really thank you for that. I'm grateful to you. Now we'll be moving on to the closing speech, which will be given by Mansi Dal. Mansi, please take over.
So before the closing, I'd like to remind you to announce the names of the finalists for Enterprise 2023.
Sure. Thanks, Mansi, for reminding me. And, Mansi has given me the task to announce the finalists. It's not easy. I think what I understand is all of you put in a lot of hard work. All of you put in long hours to put together, your submissions. But yes, there are always few winners, not that others have not worked hard and they don't have great ideas. But I think the winners have been chosen by the panel after considering a lot of factors. And, the first finalist is Team Tejas, comprising Raghav Agarwal and Sunidhi Sethani. The second is Team Chill. I like the name. Team Chill Foxes, comprising Vansh Goenka and Akshat Jain. The third is Team Fighters, with a lot of fighting spirit, comprising Vaibhav Lakhotia and Muskan Agarwal. The fourth is Team Going Concern. I think it's coming from the audit and the accounting world. So Team Going Concern, comprising Vedika Jalan and Ritika Runta. And then Team Hustlers, comprising Parth Jain and Shyansh Jain. So these are the winners, and they are the finalists, and all the best to the finalists. And I'm sure all of you will do exceedingly well in the next journey.
Thank you so much, sir. After such an inspiring session, it is my absolute honor and my pleasant duty to propose the vote of thanks today on behalf of the Entrepreneurship Development Cell in Xavier's College, Kolkata. With immense appreciation and gratitude, I thank Mr. Rajiv Bansal, present with us today, who has spent his valuable time gracing the students on a great concern at this stage. Adorning the event, you take on the contrast in work culture and experience between startups and corporates has enlightened us and showed us revolutionary paths for the future. A special mention to our respected principal, Reverend Father Dominic Savio, SJ, and Vice Principals, Reverend Father Joseph Kalendai, SJ, Reverend Father Peter Arokiam, SJ, and Professor Bertram Da Silva for encouraging us to pursue greatness and live up to the great Xaverian reputation. I would further like to thank our faculty advisor, Dr. Arup Kumar Mitra, for his leading supervision and inspiration at every point of time in college. Last but not the least, I would extend a deep sense of appreciation for all the support, timely implementation, and guidance provided by the members of the Entrepreneurship Development Cell. We owe the success of the session to you. Once again, thank you all for tuning in with EDC. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.